Welcome to World at Work TV. I'm Allison Avalos, and I'm joined today by Steve Brink of AIRINC, and we're talking about workforce globalization. Steve, first talk about some of the new trends when it comes to workforce globalization.
I'd like to really focus on one. There's been a lot of discussion on different types of workforce globalization, which is kind of a phrase that everybody uses for a lot of different things. But you can talk about the various workforce demographic shifts around the world. You can talk about the imbalance, the unbalance of the supply and demand of particular critical skills. You can talk about alternative programs for sending people across borders in terms of whether it's a globalist package or whether it's a commuter or whether it's a host-based plus from our traditional kind of expatriation focus. But really the one that's starting to impact client organizations now is the harmonization of pay across the globe. Now what I mean by that is there's several studies out there by the major consulting firms that are showing in the past, and this has been over a decade now, over the past, the pay for critical talent was very, very different between the Western kind of economies and the emerging markets. What has happened over the last decade is to equate those. So now there's a convergence of pay across the globe. Now what that is happening, it's creating a global labor market for these critical talents. And that is something that's impacting people because now executives or this critical talent can actually be anywhere in the world. And that essentially, it's becoming borderless, which then has pay impacts across the globe. And that's something that's really starting to impact large multinationals.
So what does the total rewards professional do with that knowledge? How do they apply those implications?
Well, one of the things is we're going to have to do is, as a profession, we're going to have to rethink what we do around assessing competitive pay for these type of roles and senior executive roles that are really in a global labor market. If you look back in terms of traditional surveys and compensation, they've been the same way for the last 50 years. There hasn't been a lot of change. So in terms of as it happens is that traditional surveys are usually country by country basis. They exclude any mobile workforce. They actually state, do not include any expatriates. We have shown a particular study whereby of the cadre of the top 100 and these multinationals, on average, about 30% of those top 100 critical talent at these organizations are expatriates or mobile workforce. Now that is something that's being left out of any competitive assessment. And another thing is that the inconsistent geographic coverage of the traditional surveys. Let me stop right there. There are some great surveys out there, but they all have their comparative strengths and weaknesses. One survey provider might be very strong in Europe. Another one might be in Asia. Another one North America, another one Latin America, or different combinations. But there's not that consistent kind of framework for looking at global pay labor markets because most organizations will try to actually acquire multiple ones where there's strengths. And so therefore, it becomes really time consuming to actually bring these kind of surveys and different providers together with sometimes different methodologies. And then second of all, it's not only time consuming, it's very costly. So from that perspective is that we really need to rethink in terms of what we're doing. Let me give an example. Let's say you're hiring somebody in Singapore, a very senior executive. What are the different opportunities that you could actually do to hire that individual? One, you can look at the local Singapore market. So that's one area. Two, you can try to look at competitors and recruit that from a competitor part, maybe in the region or even globally. And the third is, well, you look for somebody within your organization at another location that you can actually transfer or expatriate to that position. All three of those, in the past, they were different labor markets. Now, with this kind of critical skill set, it's actually converged to actually be one particular labor market or competitive pay rate for those three different opportunities. The current kind of traditional surveys do not approach that yet.
Can survey users drive that change, though, if they're really competing in a global labor market and they're looking for the right pay for the person that really meets their needs? Can they drive this change in the types of survey data that are needed, or does that need to happen on the part of the survey, the data providers?
Very good question. But this goes back to in terms of about making sure that you're getting the needs that you want. Clients are the ones that drive change. Sometimes consultants will drive change first, but usually the clients are driving the change for their needs. And what we have not, we've actually seen several surveys that are out there that are beginning to actually have this global change because it is impacting clients, and therefore there's a market niche to actually provide a survey that really has a global opportunity to reach the needs that we're trying to do from a client perspective.
To what degree do you think the survey users, those in the compensation profession in particular, understand this gap and that there is an opportunity to do a better job of data gathering and reporting in the global labor market?
Yeah, interesting enough, at AIRINC, we've been working with a group of large multinationals to address that change. They actually have come together and said, this is a need of ours. So what we want to do is actually create a new database that actually they can access on a true global basis, all at once, and be able to drive in terms of the needs that they want, not what the provider or the historical or traditional survey is driving, because this is the way we've always done it, so we should continue to do that. But the key elements of when working with companies like that are driving this are the Unilevers, the GSKs, the PepsiCo, the BP. We're working with all of those at a pilot project, still early on, but we're going to be releasing results soon to actually start driving kind of a solution around that. But the key elements are as follows. We actually call it our Borderless 100 rewards database. And what we've doing, we're looking at the top 100 critical executives and talent across all these organizations. And as you look at those, it is a consistent participation database around the world. So you get that strength there. We look at total rewards, so all, not just pieces of certain pay elements. The additional element that we also look at is actually we include expatriates and all the associated allowances with those expatriates. So what you're getting then is a full picture in terms of what these client organizations are really looking for to actually achieve. And that's becoming something that is ultimately going to be a requirement as you want to compete in that global labor market. And that's something that we're excited about, the market should be excited about, the client should be excited about, because it's something that with change, people view change differently. But with this change, we have a change of opportunity to actually help our organizations ensure that we're paying people competitively, especially for those critical talents that the clients are trying to ascertain.
So is that the resolution, and is the data industry headed that way to support that for total rewards professionals?
Yes, it is. In terms of as I mentioned, several surveys are beginning to do that. And some are the traditional surveys where they've been country by country. It's kind of inventor's dilemma. It's like the inventor is, well, this is the way we've done it, so we're going to continue to do it. But we're seeing small changes in those traditional surveys. But it's the new entrants that are out there in some surveys, especially some that are more industry focused on a global basis, are really helping because the clients are driving that change. And it's an exciting place to be because this is a new thing that hasn't changed in 50 years with our compensation surveys around the world.
In working with these companies, Steve, has there been any other surprising benefit?
There has. One of the things is about workforce analytics. It's one of the fastest growing fields in HR, and it's all about, but getting access to the information is sometimes difficult. And also then the benchmarking aspects of workforce analytics is another challenging element. What we're seeing when you look at the top 100 in terms of across all companies, just even knowing in comparison which companies consider who as being a critical talent, which jobs, which functions. How do the functions, one, pay versus another in complete kind of function elements. How many people in that top 100 are certain functions within the organization? So you have a different element of workforce analytics on your top cadre across the globe, and it's really more insightful. So often what we see when we do market pricing or competitive assessment, we always look at the price side of the equation. The price of labor is really what we're doing from market pricing. We don't look at the Q side. And as an old-time economist, I look at the price times quantity. And so with these workforce analytics, and granted it's just the top 100, but you can see then starting looking at the quantity side of who the top critical talents are in these organizations across that, and benchmarking those and how those relate to each other. It's an interesting additional benefit that originally when we were kind of talking about this, because we're talking about the harmonization of pay, we really weren't looking to. So this has been an added benefit in terms of this particular project that we're working on. Really excited to see where it goes.
Thanks, Steve, for your insights. We appreciate it.
Welcome.
For World at Work, I'm Allison Avalos.